Hello, everybody. My name is Delonda Green. I am the author and narrator of Michaela and Mckenzie, Family Ties and Family Lives. I just wanted to stop by and talk to you for a second, not take up too much of your time, to say thank you for following the series, for following my journey on YouTube. I realize that I've had audio mishaps and a whole lot of learning through the process. I'm just a one-man army. But if you're rocking with me, I truly, truly do appreciate you. So do me a favor, tell any of your friends or family that like books or literature about my channel if you would. I'll have stuff coming out on Amazon and in bookstores and stuff real soon. That's all the New Year's goals. If you're a fan of this series, I want you to also check out my horror series. That is a game of snakes and apples. If you're into that, if you're into monsters, if you're into that type of scene, you'll love it. If you're into sci-fi and you're into action and thrillers, then I'm pretty sure Tokyo Skyline is for you. That's all I really want to say. I don't want to take too much of your time. So this episode, I believe, is what's going to turn the series up to 10 as far as drama, learning about these characters in depth. I worked really, really hard on this one, so I hope you thoroughly enjoy it. So, sorry for taking up too much of your time. Without further ado, here's your feature presentation. Bye.
When I go with confidence, when I go to roll like hips and take a sip on it, take a trip on it. When I go, you can go slow, wind it up all night. Baby, take your time, let me know I want. When you turn me around, I want. When the neighbors yell turn down, we keep it going like pom pom pom. Throw it back then rotation, cigarettes and that season, shine bright as that season. Girl, you know you are a jam, 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 jam. Sounding like you're wasting every time.
Michaela and Mckenzie, Episode 5, Love Games. The sun is hidden behind rolling gray clouds on a rainy afternoon in Atlanta, Georgia. Three Korean businessmen, sporting almost identical black suits, exit a black SUV as rain echoes off the roof of the vehicle. The noises of downtown make the city feel full of life, even on a rainy afternoon. The men open their doors and put up umbrellas before fully getting out the truck and closing the doors behind them. They started making their way down the busy street, chatting in their native tongue amongst themselves, pointing at each other's phones. They were watching certain stocks in the market fluctuate. They made their way down the block for about 5 minutes before the taller man in the middle put his hands on the chest of both his friends as he looked up and read the sign on the store in front of him. The sign reads, "Mother Knows Best." The man in the middle flipped through his text messages before nodding to the other two, letting them know they had reached their destination. The three men shaked off their umbrellas and closed them up before entering the shop. As soon as the gentlemen entered the store, they were rushed with the strong aroma from incense burning around the place. The smoke danced and swirled around the shop, giving the place a sense of mystery and mysticism. The floor was lined with pretty mannequins wearing high-priced lingerie, fresh from the European scene. The walls were lined with sex toys from whips, handcuffs, and vibrators that came in all types of shapes, colors, and sizes. Other toys were so naughty, the men blushed just looking at them. A slender and very cute young black woman approached the men. She was short with long braids that ran down her back, and her eyes were like drops of honey. She was wearing a tight-fitting green dress with matching green and silver mask upon her face. She stopped short of the man and looked them up and down. "And what may I do for you gentlemen today?" One of the men elbowed the taller man to snap him out of his trance as he was lost in the beauty of the woman. He fumbled through his pocket and pulled out his phone. He found the correct text message and held the phone up for the woman to see. She read the message and smiled. The beauty then shocked the men by speaking perfect Korean and asking them to follow her. They all smiled and looked at each other like eager children before falling in line behind the woman. She led them to the back of the store to a door that was lit by torches on both sides. She instructed the men in Korean to wait by the door and that someone would be coming to get them shortly. She bowed to them correctly, and the men bowed back before she made her way back to the main store to greet a group of women who had just walked in. After a few moments of the gentlemen chatting amongst themselves, the metal door opened with a loud creak, and a woman stepped out. She was tall and slim, but curvy. Her skin was golden brown, and her eyes shined bright green, like two freshly polished emeralds. She wore an outfit full of golden brown and autumn red curls like a crown. The beautiful woman was wearing a very revealing black lingerie with red lace and red heels to match. A black and red mask finished off her look. This seductive woman's name was Michaela Monroe, but to these men, they would soon know her as another name, Miss Mercy. As she slowly walked towards the men, they all stood still, mouths wide open, locked in a trance. She walked around them, gently caressing each man with a giant feather. The seductive woman then turned and walked off through the door. She stopped halfway in, turned around, and beckoned the men to follow her with a single finger, while gently biting her bottom lip. The men looked at each other and spoke quietly in Korean while grinning from ear to ear before following her through the door, down a spiral staircase lit by candles hanging on the walls. At the bottom of the dimly lit set of stairs, it opened up into a large stone room. There were several candles and incense burning on shelves that lined the walls of the hidden chamber. An odd assortment of furniture filled the room. Classroom desks set in the middle of the room. They pointed towards a large black desk in front of a human-sized steel cage wedged in the far corner of the room. Chains dangled from the walls and the base of the floors. Sitting on top of the desk was a tall, voluptuous woman. Miss Mercy stood at her side with her arms folded behind her back. This mysterious woman had fair skin and piercing gray eyes. She wore black leather pants with a matching black leather jacket that was unzipped, revealing she was wearing no shirt. Her breasts were free for the world to gaze at. Her hair was short blonde and shaved on one side. She wore a black cat mask to finish off her look. She hopped off the desk, and with a thud as her heels hit the stone, she was already a tall woman, but the stilettos she wore made her tower over the man as she walked over. She surveyed the men, arms crossed, as she strolled around them in silence. "Do you know how to speak English, my dears?" she said. Her French accent was thick but sexy, and her English came across clear enough. The men nodded yes. "Good," she said as she stopped pacing and stood in front of them. "Do you know who I am?" she asked the three men. They looked at each other, and the tall man in the middle answered with a single word: "Mother." A satisfying smile crept across her face. "That's right, gentlemen. I am known as Mother. Your mother for the next hour and a half, and you will obey without any question." Two of the men nodded excitedly, but the taller man turned his back and folded his arms. Miss Mercy's eyes widened as she looked on. She had seen this song and dance before and knew where this was heading. "Oh, and what do we have here?" She pushed the other man to the side and stepped towards the one in the middle. "You would come into my house and turn your back on me?" He didn't speak nor move. Mother smiled before hardening her face. "Unacceptable," she yelled before kicking the man in the back, causing him to fall forward on his hands and knees. She walked over and put her heel on his back, pushing his face into the stone floor. The man yelled out in broken English, "I will not obey Mother. You will have to make me listen." Even with his face pressed against the floor, he was smiling. Mother shook her head slowly. "I will have to punish you severely, you know that, right?" She looked at the other men and yelled, "Disobedience will not be tolerated in my house. Now strip down to your underwear and find a desk now." She leaned in to talk to the one she was stepping on. "As for you, Mr. Trouble, I have a problem with you every time you come. I will break you as I always do. I hope you're ready." His eyes looked wild and full of life. "I am your hard-headed student," he spoke. "I will not submit." She smiled and spoke, "My dear, that is exactly what makes it fun for me. Miss Mercy, I leave those two in your care. Be gentle but harsh. It's their first time. I will attend to Mr. Trouble myself." Mother removed her foot from the man's back and knelt down and pulled him up to his feet. She pushed him against the wall and undid the whip she had clipped to her belt. She let it uncoil and twirl about before striking the man with a loud snap in the leg. "I said strip," she yelled. Mr. Trouble rubbed at his leg while smiling like he was having the time of his life. He nodded yes repeatedly while taking off his clothes as fast as he could. Miss Mercy walked up to the other two men who were sitting at the desk watching Mother. She slammed her hands on one of the man's desks, causing both of them to jump to look at her. "Eyes on me, gentlemen." They both turned around and settled in their seats as their friend cried out from a second pop of the whip. "My name is Miss Mercy," Michaela said while playing in one of the gentleman's hair. "I have two facts to state. One, I will mix pleasure with pain and you will love every single moment. And two, by the end of our session, you will either beg for more or you will beg for mercy." For the next hour and a half, screams of pain and pleasure echoed off the stone walls. Miss Mercy started off by letting the men drink champagne off of her leg that she poured down slowly, and it dripped off her toe into the men's mouth while they sat on the ground on all fours like puppies. Their attention kept drifting to the screams of their friend, so Miss Mercy, who does not like not having all the attention on her, got offended. She went to the back of the big desk and pulled out a rather large paddle. She came back and made the men bend over the desk. She paddled them while lecturing them about keeping their eyes on her at all times. Mother had Mr. Trouble handcuffed to the wall. She was whipping him, smacking him, and then pouring candle wax down his chest. She used vice grips to twist his nipples while allowing him to lick her breast. The session went by fast, and the man seemed satisfied, evident by the giant wet spots in the front of the underwear. The man got dressed and thanked the ladies several times and promised they would return soon. The pretty lady that was attending the store upstairs returned with a tray of tea that she set out on the desk before escorting the men up the stairs to leave. Michaela sat on the desk feeling pleased with herself. She stretched out before taking off her mask. Mother, taking her heels off and trading them for slides that she had in a duffel bag in the corner, walked over and made herself a cup of tea. "Good job today, Miss Mercy," she said, smiling while pouring 2 cups. "You have come a long way from the shy woman I met at that party." She handed one of the cups to Michaela. "Why, thank you," Michaela responded. "I have the world's best teacher to thank for the woman I am today," she said while taking a sip from her cup. Mother laughed slightly while waving her off. "Dear, all I did was give you a way to express yourself. The rest was locked away inside yourself, begging to get out, I assure you." "At last, I'm getting old, Mercy. Each session is starting to take its toll on me." "Old?" Michaela scoffed at the thought. "You are the hottest 46-year-old woman in the city." "Oh, I know, dear. I'm most definitely beautiful and still well in demand, I assure. But I think managing things and letting you younger girls run the day-to-day sessions is coming rather sooner than later. That's why I wanted you here today, to see if you're ready to take on my clients in Atlanta. Now, of course, there must be introductions and so forth and so on. Some seducing on your part, but I'm sure you're up to the task." Michaela's eyes widened and she looked taken back. She cleared her throat and set her cup down before speaking. I don't know what to say," is all she could come up with, even though she knew it sounded cliche. "Well, say something, dear," Mother spat, wearing a confused look on her face. "I thought you would be halfway happy, dear. I am, I swear. I'm grateful. This is just all of a sudden," Michaela said, fumbling over her words. She paused for a few seconds before speaking again. "It's just," she let her words trail off. "It's just what, Mercy? Better out than in. Speak your truth." Michaela tapped her long nails on the desk before answering. "I have a dilemma. You know I'm technically still a cop." She paused. "And?" Mother said, growing impatient. "And I believe one of my clients might be caught up in some serious crimes. Like making the national news if they were connected to the case type crimes." Mother blew out air, paused before walking across the room to her bag. She came back holding 2 cigarettes. She lit both and handed one to Michaela. My beautiful, beautiful Michaela, she said in almost a whisper as she gently rubbed her face. I told you when you started that your 2 lives could never clash. Not only for the repercussions for yourself and those around you, but for your own mental health. I can only imagine how conflicted you feel. Mother shook her head and took a long drag off her cigarette. It's a man's world, Michaela. You have to try to navigate it. Michaela started to speak, but Mother made a zip it sign with her hand. I don't want any details or the client in question. I have to protect myself. Plausible deniability and all that. But I did warn you about the men we cater to. The wealthy and the elite, socialized in tight-knit circles. It's how you got so popular so fast, and it can all be easily your downfall just as well. The rich all have their hands in pots of honeys that they want nobody to know about. No one gets wealthy without doing some dirt most of the time, my child. If it gets out that Miss Mercy was a cop, that would be bad enough. But let it be the case that Miss Mercy busted a client, and this dream is over. The word would spread like wildfire, and you would be blacklisted nationally. Michaela stared at her heels in silence. All of this she already knew. She had been wrestling with doing the right thing and losing her new life. But I will say this, Mother used 2 fingers to lift Michaela's chin so they could lock eyes. If what this client is doing is so bad that you feel compelled to act, then follow your heart. Maybe you can find a way to go about it to where you can keep both your lives in the end. Either way, me, as Mother, can't work with you anymore until this is resolved. Michaela's mouth dropped. Shh. But me, regular old Josephina Mill, will always be your friend, my dear. Michaela mouthed the words thank you. He gave Josephina a hug. I think I'm going to change clothes and go see my friends at the station. I gotta go with my gut on this one. Back in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Mckenzie was sitting in a gray SUV with Dylan, staring through binoculars. So, which guy am I looking for? The big black guy, Dylan said casually as he took a bite of his beef jerky. She lowered the binoculars slightly so he could see her roll her eyes. There are multiple big black men out there. Dylan, it's a construction site. Can you be a little bit more specific, please, asshole? Dylan sat up in his seat and gazed out the window before pointing. Right there, carrying the beam. Mckenzie guided the binoculars towards where he was pointing and found the target. God damn, she blurted out loudly. The man who looks like he should be in the NFL or the NBA? Right there. The man she was looking at could be described as dark-skinned, very tall, at least 6'5". Muscles bulged through his tight, filthy gray shirt. His back looked like a dinner table, and his legs looked like tree trunks. This guy lives at the gym. He's not at work. No doubt about it, Mckenzie said, lowering the binoculars and adjusting herself in her seat to face Dylan. Really? Really? The person on your personal kill list is Kratos from fucking God of War? Really? Dylan snickered and put his hands up. I told you I was fine helping you take out Beth. You said my first time should mean something personal to me. So, he pointed at the large man, I chose my childhood bully, who kicked my ass every day, every chance he got. By the way, the dude's name is Hummer. A name given to him by his football coaches when he was younger, since he was always built like one. Mckenzie stared at Dylan for a few seconds with her mouth slightly open before speaking. Do I look like one of those assassins from that book Tokyo Skyline? What the fuck, man? Like, really, what the fuck? What? Dylan said, laughing out loud this time. Look, he made my life a living hell. He even dated my sister for a bit. Dylan got serious all of a sudden. I warned her he was a piece of shit, but she waved me off. She didn't even care that he had been bullying me since grade school. After a few months of them dating, A rumor went around that she had slept with one of his homeboys, which she didn't, may I add. But shit got ugly, and they got into it. Dylan stopped talking and stared out the window. Mckenzie rubbed him on the shoulder gently. "What happened?" she asked softly. Dylan turned and looked her in the eyes. He put her in the hospital. Broke her arm, concussion, busted lips, eyes shut, everything. Mckenzie slowly shook her head and kept rubbing his shoulder. She hated men who acted this way. It made her blood boil. Dylan gave her a soft smile, thanking her in silence for the comfort. He reached in his pocket and pulled out a vape, took a long drag before blowing out a large cloud out of his car window. Me, being her only brother, took it upon myself to seek revenge on her behalf. I showed up at his house with a bat and started smacking his car until he came outside. I tried to take him out, but even with a bat, he beat me to within an inch of my life. Together, she made him look at her. Together, we'll take him out. Don't worry about it, Mckenzie said, smiling. With a well thought out plan, there's always a way to achieve your desired outcome. Trust me. Mckenzie paused and stared at Dylan, who was staring out the window, before speaking again. You know what? I'm going to tell you something that only two people know. Dylan sat up in the seat, giving Mckenzie his undivided attention. My second kill was similar to this douchebag. Your second kill? Dylan repeated, staring at Mckenzie like she was the most interesting woman in the whole world. Yeah, very similar. Back home in Clarksville, me and this little girl got into a fight over the swings in the second grade. Mckenzie laughed while reminiscing. We were inseparable after that. She was dating an older guy who thought he was a hard ass because he hung out with real gangsters and smoked a lot of weed, and he sold a little himself. After a few weeks of dating, every time she came over, she would have new marks, bruises. She blamed them all on soccer. But I knew that was total bullshit. One day we were chilling and smoking at her house in the garage like we had done plenty of times before. Her parents were out of town at that time. He went to roll more and accused us of stealing because his bag seemed off to him. So we all got into an argument, and then he slapped her hard. So I ran over and tried to help and got smacked just as hard. He was drunk and high off more than just weed. He was a pillhead. He started kicking her, punching her, saying she needed to learn her place. As I was getting up, I saw her eyes rolling into the back of her head, but he didn't let up. He just kept punching her and kicking her. I leaped up and grabbed a hammer that was hanging on the wall and ran over and hit him in the head in an attempt to make him stop. But Mckenzie paused mid-story. But what? Dylan said, hanging off her every word. She continued. I had the hammer facing the wrong way, and I drove the claw part straight into his head. Dylan's eyes widened and his jaw dropped. She stared at him, nodding slightly, before continuing. Yeah, he turned and reached out for me. Took a couple of steps before collapsing on the ground dead. Dylan sat back in his seat, hit his vape, and blew out another thick cloud before speaking. That shit is heavy, man. What did you do with the body? He asked. Mckenzie smiled before replying. Now that's way too many details, my friend. Right. Stupid of me to ask, Dylan said while peering back out the window. Mckenzie leaned back in her seat and stared out into the sky. She wore a glossed over look on her face and spoke in a serious, quiet tone. My father once told me when I was little that Lady Karma always wins in the end. But sometimes she needs others to act on her behalf for retribution to be delivered. I took that to heart. I feel as if I am the sword of Lady Karma, one of the people chosen to punish those who otherwise would get away with causing suffering in other people's lives, leaving behind a trail of trauma in their wake. She turned her head and stared Dylan down. I feel like I'm doing my small part to help balance the cosmic scales. Dylan stared at Mckenzie with aberration in his eyes. He put his hand on her thigh. And just when I thought you couldn't amaze me any more than you already do, he said. He leaned in slowly for a kiss. Mckenzie put her hand up. Dylan, don't. Just don't, okay? He got frustrated and returned to his seat, shaking his head, running his tongue against his cheek. Are you seriously gonna pout right now? Mckenzie seemed to have snapped back to her normal witty self. We had a deal. You wanted a date. We went on 2. Dinner one night, and the next day we went bowling. I enjoyed myself both times. Thank you. Next, you want to help with your communication skills with the ladies, or lack thereof. Me and Julie gave you a master class the other night while kicking back shots. And the very next day, may I add, on a test run, you got a number from one of the hottest girls on campus. Dylan slowly shook his head while playing with the settings on his vape. Last step, me and you are going to take out your childhood bully. I'm holding up my end of the deal, Dylan. I never promised me and you would be a thing. Dylan shrugged his shoulders and took a hit off his vape. He was quiet for a few moments before rubbing his face and smiling. He fixed himself. Well, since I'm setting up shop in the permanent friend zone, Mckenzie rolled her eyes. Do you mind hooking me up with your friend? Mckenzie scrunched her face up at his question before realizing who it was he was referring to. Julie? She said flatly before fake laughing out loud. That's a no written in bright neon letters hanging in the sky on a starless night. No. Why? Dylan said, still smiling. Does it make you jealous that I find your friend attractive and sweet when she wants to be? Oh, and by the way, I dig the whole she knows what she wants attitude. That girl's a whole vibe. All I'm saying. Mckenzie narrowed her eyes while staring at him blankly. She knew what he was trying to do. I don't own you, Dylan. You want to talk to her? Be my guest. Just know she is... Mckenzie paused. A lot, she said while widening her eyes and staring at the dashboard. She eats dudes alive if they're too soft. Dylan patted her on the shoulder. Thanks for the advice, buddy. I'll take my chances. Shoot for the moon. The expression on Mckenzie's face as he patted her on the shoulder showed that she was annoyed. But she would never, ever admit such a thing out loud. Instead, she changed the subject. She looked through her binoculars to find their target again. What time does pickup truck get off again? Dylan let out a small laugh and checked his phone. Hummer, he emphasized the name, gets off in about 20 minutes. Good, Mckenzie said, staring at the target still. We'll follow him home, learn his day-to-day habits. What time does he go to bed? What time does he get up? Roommates, pets, all of that. The more info, the smoother this should go. Dylan smiled and shook his head. You're the master, I'm the student. Whatever you say, I'm gonna go with, old wise one. He fake bowed, which made Mckenzie giggle a little. When she looked up at him with a wicked, wicked idea struck her like lightning. A naughty smile crept across her face as she stared into his eyes. Dylan, have you ever heard of an old movie called Cruel Intentions? He shrugged his shoulders and shook his head. Nah, but I've seen that poster in your room. Why do you ask? Her eyes widened and danced with excitement. So it's my favorite movie of all time. Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, Catherine, is my spirit animal. Like, literally. Okay, Dylan said, a little confused. And she made a bet with her brother Sebastian, which I'm going to offer you the same bet. Okay, Dylan said, giggling. He sat up in his seat. It piqued his interest. What is it? She took one finger and dragged it up his leg slowly as she spoke. If you can get Julie to let you take her out on a date, I'll give you one night. He looked down at her finger as it traveled up his thigh. One night? He asked softly. One night to do whatever you want with me. Nothing's off limits. I'm all yours. She leaned in close enough to give him a kiss. Now what do you say to that, Dylan? Act 3. Back in Atlanta, Michaela pulled up to the precinct. She hopped out dressed in a black business suit with gray shirt and some flats. Far different from what she was wearing earlier that evening. As soon as she made her way in, some of her co-workers looked at her, shocked, before waving at her. Other groups of cops looked at her as she passed by, waited till she got out of arm's reach, and then whispered amongst themselves. A select few stopped her for a chat. She knew, of course, all of this was coming. She had been on leave for a while and was pretty sure all types of rumors were swirling about why and what happened that caused her very sudden disappearing act. She had made her way to Amy's office. She knocked on the door before opening it slightly to peek in. The office was a decent size and had 2 giant windows with the blinds shut. It had a bookshelf, small table, and mini fridge all on one side. The other side had a huge wooden desk that was tucked under the giant windows. Amy was on the phone, bent over the long wooden desk, talking and scrolling on her laptop at the same time. She looked up as the door opened and smiled from ear to ear as she gestured Michaela to come in. Michaela closed the door behind herself and looked around the office as she made her way over to Amy. Amy told whoever she was on the phone with goodbye and set her phone down to give Michaela a big hug. "Damn, girl, I did not expect to see you here," Amy said excitedly. "Does this mean you're coming back, or are you just stopping by?" Michaela grabbed Amy by the shoulders while smiling. "Baby steps, girl, baby steps. Let me get over the anxiety of having the whole building looking at me like the dead has returned to life first." Both girls laughed. "Screw these folks. They live off drama, gossip, and coffee, girl. Fuck them," Amy said while waving her hands in the air. "Ooh, has Sergeant seen you yet?" she asked. "No, and I like to keep it that way for as long as I possibly can," Michaela responded while giggling. "Oh, I feel you. Once he gets you in that office, girl, you're gonna be stuck in there for a couple of hours. He's always asking for reports on how you're doing. He's a cranky mofo and a hard ass to boot, but deep down, the old fart cares, and a lot." There was a few seconds of silence between the women before Amy spoke. "So, what brings you down here? Did you want to chill with me for a little bit before we hit the club tonight, or try to grab some food? What was it?" "Girl, the promoter said that they are sold out. Been that way for days. I guess people really do love themselves some Amy Chang. What do you think?" Michaela was confused, and her face couldn't hide it. Amy stared at her before her own face went blank. "Really, Michaela? You forgot, didn't you?" Michaela stood awkwardly, playing with a pen on the desk. "Maybe. It slipped my mind. I'm so sorry," she said while sticking her bottom lip out, trying to look like she was pouting. Amy shook her head. "What am I gonna do with you?" It's okay, throwing up her hands. "You'll be there tonight though, right? Right?" Michaela nodded slightly while smiling nervously. "There's gonna be record label people to go along with a packed house. I'm gonna need my..." She paused and looked deep into Michaela's eyes for a long few seconds, as if she was searching for an answer. "Nothing," she said while looking back down at her laptop. "So, what did you stop by for?" "You need your what?" Michaela repeated. "Nothing, just drop it," Amy said, sounding exhausted. She sat on top of her desk, folded her arms, clearly and visibly upset. Michaela stood up straight and gathered her thoughts. "I might have a lead on the missing girls case. Specifically the identity of the John Doe, but," she threw her hands up, "I can't tell you just yet where I got the info from. I need to verify some things first, and I wanted to use your laptop and maybe get access to the case files too. To do so, please and thank you. She finished with a forced smile. But first, can we rewind time a bit and you finish your sentence from a few moments ago? I feel like you left a lot of emotion just kind of, floating around in the air. She finished her rant with an awkward laugh, trying to cut the tension that was filling the room quickly. You are unbelievable sometimes, Amy spoke quietly, looking like she was at a loss for words. You have info on mine and James's case, but you can't give it to us till you verify it yourself. I'm following correctly, right? Michaela nodded yes while still forcing an awkward smile. Amy looked speechless while shaking her head slowly. It's something new with you every day, Michaela, Amy said, getting loud. I'm trying to help, I promise, Michaela said, reaching for Amy's hand, who snatched it away. Why are you so mad at me? Michaela said, taking a few steps back, crossing her own arms. Amy got up and took a deep breath. Why am I mad? She repeated. Where the fuck do I start? You have been pushing me for weeks. No, scratch that. Months to take my music seriously. I fed off that faith you showed in me and I booked the fucking show. I pulled the strings to get the label scouts to come out, and my own girlfriend forgets the most important fucking night of my music career. Oh, Michaela said, eyes widened, overhearing the girlfriend word being used. Oh is right, Amy continued. Then you bring that tight ass of yours down here and say you have critical information about a case you're not even fucking assigned to. Hell, I don't even know if you would ever come back to being a cop and... Look at you now. She pointed at Michaela. So yes, I'm pissed. Michaela waited a second before speaking. First off, excuse me for trying to get you to see yourself the way I do. You have a God-given talent for music. People would kill to have your voice, Amy. I just want to see you happy. And music is your dream. It is your happiness. The only reason you gave it up the first time around is because of your overly strict parents' disapproval. So you chose a career to make them proud. Amy rolled her eyes before barking out. I like being a cop, Michaela. Just like my father. There's nothing wrong with that. I like being a cop too, Michaela sounded off, pointing at herself. But I'm not going to let anybody shame me for having other dreams, Amy. Well, your life record is 0 for 2 in the father department, so I guess you won't understand what it's like to try to live up to somebody's expectations, Miss Monroe, Amy snapped. She looked down at her desk, knowing that last part was probably taking shit too far. Michaela turned her head sideways, taken back, looking stunned. I can't believe those words just came out of your fucking mouth. Shit, my bad, Amy said in a quiet tone. Michaela closed her mouth and stood up straight. You know what? You and your feelings right now, so I'm gonna let that shit slide. Michaela walked in small circles around the room, mumbling under her breath before speaking again. Here's my next point. When did we enter a formal relationship? When did we put a label on us? The vibe was right, and you never said you weren't cool with how things were going, so why switch up, Amy? Amy's mouth dropped open. She walked to the back of her desk and stared at Michaela, rolling her tongue against her cheek. What else do you call it, Michaela, when you're fucking the same person every other day? Calling the same person every day. People, regular people, Michaela, catch feelings. Sorry that's a foreign fucking concept for you. I mean, we are talking at least. Or am I a side chick? I mean, what am I? Oh, I get it. I'm something to entertain the beautiful Michaela Monroe. There, that's my place. First off, lower your damn voice, Michaela said through her teeth. I don't give a fuck what these people think, Amy said, getting loud. I'm a damn good cop, and I'm proud of my choice to be gay, unlike you. Like me, Michaela said, getting mad herself. Yeah, you. You talk about being free and living life on your terms, but that's just all talk. You're scared about what the world thinks about you, same as everybody else. To think, I thought I was falling in love with you, that you might feel the same. Silly, dumbass me. Amy, you're special to me. You really are. Michaela whispered as sincerely as she possibly could. She walked behind the desk and tried to hug Amy, but she shoved her off. Nah. We just been playing house, and I'm tired of these love games. You don't even have plans on coming to the show tonight, do you? Michaela dropped her head before answering. I have to work tonight. Of course you fucking do. At a mystery bar that no one is allowed to go to. Amy, just let me explain. She cut Michaela off with a wave of her hand as a single tear rolled down her cheek. You know what? She said, half laughing. I blame me. She quickly packed some of her papers into her briefcase and grabbed her jacket. She looked at her laptop, then back at Michaela. Use it and take it home with you. The only reason I'm letting you do this, for the record, is for the off chance whatever you know can help find those missing women. She grabbed her keys and rushed by Michaela, bumping her as she passed. She opened the door to the office and turned around and stared at Michaela. I'll come get the laptop in the morning when I come pick up my things from your apartment. She walked out of the office and closed the door behind her, leaving Michaela and all of her mixed up emotions alone in silence. Michaela blew out air, eyes wide as she walked behind the desk and sat down. She had 1,000 thoughts spinning around in her head and needed a second to process what just happened. Amy had just broken things off with her. How did everything escalate so fast? She replayed the last 15 minutes over and over in her head. She decided it was best to try to talk to Amy in the morning when she stopped by. Maybe she could, fix this? She did have strong feelings for Amy, but it always came back down to commitment, an idea Michaela was never too fond of. What would Amy say if she told her the truth about what she had been up to for the last year and a half? How much would she so-called love her then? Focus, Michaela, she told herself. She did her best to push all those thoughts to the back of her mind. She opened the laptop and spent the next couple of hours deep diving into the case files and all of Amy's notes. She was starting to get a clearer picture of what was taking place. Most of the women that were missing were minority and between the ages of 17 and 25, except for some women who were Caucasian, but the same age. As she scrolled through the pictures, it occurred to her that maybe they weren't selected at random, but selected for traits. She wrote it down in her notes and then chewed on the back of a pen. This isn't a serial killer because no bodies have turned up. Amy already had an idea on what was going on, highlighted in her notes. The word sex trade. Actually, it made the most sense, the more Michaela thought about it. But how was Lipton or his company attached to something like this? And why? Hell, he was making money hand over fist. It made no sense. Unless people in his company were using his resources to run this business on the side. She could see that. He wasn't the sharpest man she knew. With all the partying he does, and drinking and smoking and womanizing, it doesn't seem too far-fetched if he didn't know what was really going on in his newly acquired real estate empire. So the question came back to the man she met that night. She could find no pictures of the man on any of the company's websites, nor the security detail business that Lipton would use frequently at most of his events. The dude was a ghost. She was close to giving up for the night and thought about taking a break when an article caught her attention. She smiled at the laptop. Jacob Lipton, you naughty, naughty boy, you. I didn't know you were getting married. She clicked through the pictures to see the bride. Chattanooga's very own Bethany Ann Eves. She paused as she read a couple of weeks back. Her sister was Catherine Eves and was killed by her boyfriend. Why does that sound familiar? She kept reading. Huh. These were the same kids her sister Mckenzie knew from school. Mckenzie and Julie literally just went to this memorial service. That's an odd-ass coincidence, she thought to herself. She shook off the weird vibe she was getting and kept scrolling through the pictures. Then, boom. There he was, standing off to the side in a photo where Jacob and his bride-to-be were posing with none other than Beth's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Eves. She immediately went to go lurk on Bethany's social media for more pictures and was shocked to find her mystery man was in several of them. He was never named or tagged, but was in the background. He didn't work for the Liptons per se. She got it now. He worked for the Eves. And was on what? Loan to Jacob? Things didn't make sense, but Michaela felt like she was onto something, so she kept lurking. Under one of Beth's posts from a couple of days back, she found her way to get the answers she needed. Beth posted a picture in an ugly Christmas sweater, and the caption read, "Are you ready for our annual naughty or nice party?" with a bunch of women tagged in it. She snooped around the comment section and struck gold. Beth was explaining to one of the women that her husband-to-be had set the ladies up with a celebrity sex teacher for the event. Michaela smiled to herself. If he was going to spare no expense, which was his style, the only woman in Atlanta that he would book for this event was nobody other than Mother herself. She just knew it. Michaela felt like she could breathe a little easier, having something to go on and a way to get to the mystery man who was surely going to be there. She was about to call it a night and close the laptop when Amy got an email from a username that was just a bunch of numbers. The first part of the message read, "This is your last warning, back off the case." That made Michaela's blood run cold. Privacy or not, Michaela opened the thread and was shocked at what she... Some unknown person or group had been threatening Amy for days to back off the case or else. Why didn't Amy tell anybody about this? Why didn't she tell her? Panic set in as Michaela shut the laptop. How would anybody know Amy was working on the case? Do these people have an inside guy in the force? Michaela was worried at this point, and at that moment she wanted nothing more than to make sure Amy was safe. Maybe she did feel something more for Amy than she was willing to let herself admit. She grabbed her things and bolted to her car. Outside, the storm was raging. She walked fast with her umbrella up in one hand and the laptop case in the other. A man was standing next to her car, which made her slow up her pace. She tried to make out the man's face in the rain, but she couldn't. But as she got closer, she realized it was no other than James, in a pea coat with a collar popped, rocking a black New York hat backwards, as usual. She walked up to him and said, "Hi, James. Bye, James." "Whoa, now hold up." "I wouldn't stand around in the rain for a simple hi and bye, Angel," he said, smiling. "You don't have a couple of minutes for an old friend? I mean, at one point, we were the closest of friends." James looked her up and down. Michaela rolled her eyes. "Move, boy, I got somewhere to be." James played chicken with her, not letting her get in the car. "James," she said, trying to be calm, "I'm not in the mood tonight. It's raining and I have somewhere to be." He didn't move, but started talking loud over the storm. "I won't take up too much of your time, sweetheart. I just need to get something off my chest. I once lit a fire in your eyes when you saw me. Now I'm an old flame you let burn out and threw away like a burnt up candle. You owe me this much." He laughed to himself. She looked annoyed and rolled her eyes. "Is this going somewhere, James? We didn't work out, okay? Can't you accept that?" Michaela yelled over the rain. "I came to accept it. I took up a new hobby, too. Photography." He pushed a vanilla folder into her chest. He leaned in and whispered in her ear, "My guess? is we will be having a friendly chat real soon, Caleboo. He winked and set off down the street. Michaela opened the folder and her eyes widened as she flipped through the first picture. She slowly raised her eyes to look at James. He stopped and turned around and yelled, "By the way, don't get involved in this case, Caleboo. There are really dangerous people mixed up in it. Just walk away. That's my advice." He turned and walked down the street till she lost sight of him in the heavy downpour. She fumbled her keys in her hands and dropped them in the rain. The weather and the mix of wild emotions she was feeling left her hands shaking. She picked them up and eventually unlocked her car. Once inside, she slammed the door shut and tossed the folder, causing it to bounce off the passenger window. Photos scattered all over the seat and floor. Michaela gripped the steering wheel, locking her arms into place as she tried to steady her breathing. Her eyes slowly turned to the photos that were spilled out of the folder for the whole world to see. A mix of light from the street lamp and random lightning strikes illuminated the pictures. James had captured photos of Amy coming and going from her apartment, and vice versa. He even got pics of Amy and her having sex in Michaela's living room, Amy's kitchen, shit, even making out at the bar. How long had he been taking these damn pictures? Even though the thought that he had seen so much and knew what they had been doing this whole time burned her up on the inside, it was the other pictures that had her on the verge of hyperventilating. He had photos, several of them, of her with clients. Her whole body was shaking with rage. Her whole world seemed like it was spiraling out of control. She couldn't hold it in any longer. She balled her hands up in a fist and started beating the steering wheel while screaming out in anger. After she calmed down, she sat in silence for a few moments. The sound of rain hitting the car soothed her as she collected her thoughts. She pulled a cigarette out of the middle console, lit it, and took a deep pull and exhaled. One problem at a time, she told herself as she started the car. She pulled off into traffic to catch up with Amy at the bar, praying the whole way everything else was fine and Amy was safe. She pulled up to the club and started to get out. Paused and thought it was better to be safe than sorry. She reached in her glove box and grabbed her badge and gun. As she made her way inside the club, it was jam-packed, just like Amy said it would be. She pushed and weaved through the crowd to the bar and surveyed the stage. It appeared the band was taking 5 and Amy was nowhere to be found. Michaela took a deep breath, straightened her clothes, and fixed her hair. A pretty young bartender made her way over wearing a big smile. "What can I do for you, hun?" "A Crown and Coke, please, and a shot of Crown on the side." "Thank you." Michaela started fumbling through her jacket pockets for a wallet when a tall and solid-looking woman squeezed beside her. She was a black woman with long dreads pulled into a tight ponytail. She was wearing a huge bubble coat with a polo shirt underneath. She smiled at Michaela, then turned to the bartender. "I'll have whatever this beautiful lady is having, and I'll pay for everything." Michaela smiled and said, "Thank you. You're too kind." "Oh no, it's my pleasure," the woman said politely with a slight nod. "I'm going to take the seat beside you. It's the least I can do. Don't worry. I didn't come over here to hit on you or anything, even though you are gorgeous." Michaela smiled and said, "Stop it. If I look how my day has been going, I would have to say you're being overly kind." The woman laughed. "I've had a couple of those days lately myself." The bartender brought the drinks out and placed them in front of the ladies. "Would that be all for you now? Would you guys like a food menu, perhaps?" Michaela shook her head. "No thanks." "No thanks, but take this." She slid her a handful of bills. "Hey, I was buying the drinks," the big lady said with a smile. "Exactly, so I got the tip," Michaela replied. "Will you girls flag me down if you need anything else, okay? Miss Amy Chang should be back on stage for her last song any moment now." "That's why I came up here, yo, to get a better seat. She's been killing it all night. Girl got that juice," Michaela's new bar buddy said while she was raising her shot for a quick toast. Michaela knocked glasses with the lady and killed the shot before slamming it on the bar, reaching for a drink to chase it with. "She is special, to say the least," Michaela said, staring at her drink. Shit, I came tonight just for her, the lady replied. Just then, the crowd started clapping as Amy took the stage. Michaela's mouth dropped open. Amy's hair, which was usually messy, was done and draped over her shoulders in long curls. She was wearing a pretty red dress and heels to match. Her bright red lipstick made the whole look pop. Michaela rarely saw her dress up. She was a sweatpants and t-shirt kind of girl, but not tonight. Damn, Michaela said. Amy motioned for the crowd to be quiet before speaking. I hope you guys have enjoyed yourselves so far this evening. It has been a pleasure, and I mean an absolute pleasure to sing for you guys. Amy scanned the crowd as applause erupted. She looked over towards the bar and paused as she saw Michaela. Michaela froze as well. She didn't know if Amy was looking at her, through her, or into her. Either way, the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. Amy gathered herself and continued. For my last song, I want to slow it down and sing about love. But not the word love, that shit that you feel deep down in your soul. That shit that can make you feel like swimming in clouds, or at some points makes you feel like you're drowning in sorrow. The crowd erupted. I hope you guys feel this.
Your heart, keep it in your pocket for safekeeping. Don't ever let nobody be the reason you throw it out and stop caring about it. Don't let your hair get in the way. Can't be defined by your mistakes. You know you try really hard, but sometimes you fall. Yeah, sometimes you fall. Say I'm not sensitive, but I can sense if it's right for me. Don't let your hair get in the way. Can't be defined by your mistakes. You know you try really hard, but sometimes you fall. Yeah, sometimes you fall.
Every word Amy sang touched Michaela in a way hands couldn't. She could sense love, hurt, and passion spilling from her voice. She was feeling a range of emotions as she absorbed the words and sounds. The argument from earlier played in her mind like a movie. She now wanted more than anything to make things right, to tell her she cared for her as deeply as she did her. The tall lady leaned in and said, "I'm gonna go get a closer look for a picture. See you around, pretty lady." Michaela smiled and waved as the girl disappeared into the crowd. The whole club was in a trance as the song came to an end. Michaela clapped hard, smiling proudly at Amy as she bowed. Out of nowhere, gunshots echoed through the club and applause turned to panicked screams. Amy was hit in what looked like her shoulder, spinning her around before she hit the ground. Michaela's heart dropped to her stomach at the sight. She pulled her gun out and started surveying the crowd of panicked people for the shooter. Her heart was racing and her breathing was uneasy as she darted her head back and forth, searching through the chaos before time stood still in her mind. As the lady that she had just had drinks with was pointing a 9mm at Amy. Michaela snapped out of her what the fuck moment and made a split-second decision. With little or no hesitation, she took aim, shooting the lady twice, hitting her above the shoulder, and the other shot smacked her in her side. She tumbled over, grabbing at the wound, spilling blood from her neck. Michaela ran over to the woman and kicked her gun out of arm's reach. "Why?" Michaela screamed at the woman. "Answer!" The woman smiled slightly before her head tilted and rested in a pool of scarlet. Michaela watched the light fade from the woman's eyes before snapping back to reality. Michaela ran on stage to find Amy. All she saw was a trail of blood leading backstage. She looked at the DJ, who was cowering under his booth, and shouted, "Atlanta PD, which way did the singer go? Hurry up, tell me!" He looked at her, eyes full of fear, before pointing a shaking arm towards the back. She rushed past plenty of panicked people and found a back door that led out to an alley. She burst through it, shouting Amy's name. She looked down both ends before seeing her mystery man standing over Amy, gun drawn. He glanced at Michaela and then grabbed Amy, turning her into a human shield, pointing his gun at Michaela. "Back off," he shouted. "Atlanta PD," she shouted back. "Let her go, asshole." She took a couple of steps forward, and he turned his gun on Amy. "I said back the fuck off, bitch. I'll paint this alley with every thought this pretty bitch has ever had." Michaela paused and put her hands up. "Okay, mister. Just calm down. You don't want to kill a couple of cops, man." Amy blurted, "Fuck me. Shoot his ass." "Shut up," he roared back. "She should have died back in that club," he said with an evil grin. "But the cliche is a cliche for a reason. Good help is so hard to find. So, plans change, and she's coming on a trip with me. Now put your gun down and back off." Just then, a blue car sped down the alley from behind him and Amy and stopped about a foot away. "It's okay," Amy said. I'll be okay." Tears fell down Michaela's face. She locked eyes with Amy, and her chest swelled up with an emotion she hadn't felt in a very long time. Amy, with blood trickling out the corner of her mouth, managed a faint smile. Michaela sobbed the words, "I love you." Amy smiled as tears wet her face as well. She managed to say the words, "I know, dummy." Jake Golden hit Amy over the head with the back of his gun, knocking her unconscious. Michaela screamed, "No!" as the man driving the car opened his door and let off shots at Michaela. She dove behind a dumpster as the shots ricocheted off the side. She heard car doors opening and closing and knew that this was her last chance to save Amy. So she ran back out into the alley and fired shots into the driver window as the car sped down the alley. The driver hit the gas and ran Michaela over, sending her tumbling over the top and off the back of the vehicle like a rag doll. She lay there, barely moving, watching the car get further out of reach of her outstretched hand. Some of the people that was interviewed that night said that they heard her last words before she passed out were Amy.
Your heart, keep it in your pocket for safekeeping. Don't ever let nobody be the reason you throw it out, you stop caring about it. Don't let your head get in the way, can't be defined by your mistakes. You know you try and you try really hard, but sometimes you fall. You're